My name is Daniel. I'm 31, and the day I closed on my first house felt like the first real step into the life I'd been working toward for years. Not an apartment with noisy neighbors, not a rented space where I had to ask permission to hang a picture on the wall, but a home of my own. If you've ever worked for years to build independence, only to wonder whether your family would ever respect it, you'll understand why this story still burns in my chest. Stay with me. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit like, and tell me in the comments, what's the one thing you'd buy for yourself if you didn't have to explain it to anyone? The house wasn't flashy. 2 bedrooms, a small yard, a cracked driveway that needed repaving. But when I stood on the porch with the keys in my hand, I felt a surge of pride so strong I had to catch my breath. Every overtime shift, every night, I went without so I could save, every sacrifice, it was all in these walls. I didn't tell my parents about it, not because I wanted to shut them out, but because I knew how they were. Every decision I ever made had been questioned, criticized, or flat out controlled. When I chose a college, they told me I'd regret it. When I picked my career, they said it wasn't good enough. When I moved into my first apartment, they pointed out every flaw like they were inspecting a used car. So this time, I wanted one thing to be mine, a place I could build without hearing their voices in my ear. For the first few weeks, it was bliss. I painted the walls the colors I wanted, bought furniture that suited me, not them. On weekends, I'd mow the lawn, then sit on the porch with a beer, looking at the sunset and thinking this is mine. Finally mine. But secrets in families don't stay secrets for long. It started with my mother's voice on the phone. "You've been busy lately," she said casually. "Working on something?" "Just work?" I said, trying to keep it light. "You're hiding something," she pressed, half joking, half serious. I can tell. I laughed it off, but my gut twisted. She had that way of prying until she unearthed whatever she wanted to know. A week later, my father dropped by unannounced at my apartment. Only, I wasn't there. I was at the house, scrubbing the kitchen floor. He called me 3 times, left 2 voicemails. "Where are you?" His voice was sharp, demanding. I ignored them until the next day. When I finally answered, he didn't bother with small talk. "Where are you hiding from us, Daniel?" I told myself I'd come clean soon, once I had settled in a little more. But before I could, they found out on their own. And what I discovered after that shook me more than I could have ever prepared for. It was a Saturday morning when I heard the knock. Not the polite kind, but the sharp, insistent pounding that told me whoever was on the other side wouldn't leave until I opened the door. When I swung it open, there they were. My parents. My mother's eyes darted over the porch, the fresh paint, the yard. My father stood stiff, his gaze sweeping past me into the living room like he already owned it. "So," my mother said, her voice sweet but edged, "this is where you've been disappearing to." I froze for a moment, then forced a calm smile. "How did you? Your landlord called?" My father cut in. "Want to know if you'd moved out officially. He said he hadn't seen you in weeks." Of course. I should have known. My parents had always kept their fingers in every corner of my life. I stepped aside reluctantly. "Come in." They didn't wait for an invitation. My mother swept inside, running her fingers over the counters like she was inspecting for dust. My father moved room to room, opening doors, peering into closets, saying nothing but observing everything. Finally, my mother turned to me, her smile too wide. "Well, isn't this nice? Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted to do it on my own," I said evenly. Without opinions, without interference. Her smile faltered. "We're your parents, Daniel. We should have been part of this." "You've been part of everything," I said quietly. "This one thing was mine." My father's voice cut through the room, low and steady. "How much did you pay?" I hesitated. "Enough." His eyes narrowed. "You can't afford something like this without help. Did you take out a risky loan? Did you sign something you don't understand?" I felt my jaw tighten. "I know what I'm doing." For a long moment, silence stretched between us. Then my father chuckled, a humorless sound. "We'll see." They left not long after, but the air in the house felt different. Heavy, as if their presence lingered even after the door closed. Over the next few weeks, their visits became frequent. My mother would stop by unannounced, bringing food as an excuse, but her eyes always scanned the house, noting every change. My father started asking pointed questions about the deed, the mortgage, the terms of the loan. "Where are the papers?" he asked one evening. "In a safe place," I replied. He studied me, his jaw working. "You should have let us handle it. Property is complicated. One wrong move, and it slips right out of your hands." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Funny. That's exactly why I didn't tell you." But beneath my words, unease began to stir. They weren't just curious. They were circling, probing, as if looking for cracks they could exploit. And then little things began to happen. One afternoon, I came home to find mail missing from my box, letters I knew had been delivered. Another time, a neighbor mentioned seeing my father parked outside, just sitting in his car, watching the house. The final straw came when I received a letter from the bank. It referenced a request for information regarding the property title, a request I hadn't made. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the letter in my hand, my heart pounding. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't interference. It was something else, something I hadn't yet uncovered. And whatever it was, I knew it wasn't in my favor. The letter from the bank didn't leave my hands for hours. I kept reading it, over and over, as though a different meaning might suddenly reveal itself. But the words were plain: inquiry regarding property title. Someone had tried to access information about my deed. Someone who wasn't me. I sat back, the envelope limp in my hands, my thoughts racing. My parents' questions about the mortgage, their obsession with where the papers were, the way they kept showing up uninvited. It wasn't just meddling. It was deliberate. And the worst part? I couldn't shake the feeling they believed they had a right to do it. The next time my mother came by, I watched her more closely. She carried a casserole dish, but her eyes went straight to the mail piled on my counter. When she thought I wasn't looking, she slipped one envelope slightly out of the stack, scanning the return address. I cleared my throat. "Lose something." She jumped, her hand snapping back. "Oh, I was just straightening it for you." "You're so messy, Daniel." Messy? I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Everything about the house was orderly, because I kept it that way. Later that week, I caught my father outside, measuring the yard with his eyes like he was already planning renovations. "The lot is good," he muttered. "Could build something bigger here." "This is my house," I reminded him. He gave me a look that was almost pitying. "You think owning a house makes you independent? You don't know what you've taken on. Sooner or later, you'll need our help." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words. Sooner or later. The next morning, I decided to check my documents again. I had stored everything carefully in a lockbox: the deed, the mortgage agreement, the closing statement. I pulled it out from under my bed, unlocked it, and spread the papers across the kitchen table. Everything looked right. My name printed clearly, the notary's seal pressed into the paper. But as I read more carefully, I noticed a detail that made my stomach twist. On one of the bank statements, a line had been added: authorized party, Mr. and Mrs. Turner. My parents' names. My hands shook as I read it again, then again. I had never authorized that. I had never given permission for anyone else to be added, which meant someone had forged my consent. I stared at the page, ball rising in my throat. It wasn't just meddling. It wasn't just prying. They were trying to take ownership. The phone rang, startling me. It was Aaron, my cousin, the only one in the family who ever really kept his distance from the drama. "Hey man," he said. "Weird question. Did you sell your house?" "What?" My voice cracked. I heard my aunt, your mom, on the phone the other day. She was talking about preparing to list something on Maple Street. I figured she meant yours, since you just bought it. I gripped the edge of the table, the documents spread before me. My mother's hands on my mail. My father's eyes on my yard. The forged authorization. It all lined up now. They weren't just circling me like hawks. They were circling my house. And they already thought it was theirs to sell. By the time Sunday dinner rolled around, I wasn't sure if I should even go. But skipping it would have raised questions, and if there was one thing I needed now, it was to hear the lies straight from their mouths. I arrived at my parents' house with a forged bank statement folded neatly in my pocket. My mother greeted me at the door, too cheerful, like someone already rehearsing a victory speech. My father sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid, his glass already filled. Rachel, my sister, was there too, smiling like she had just been let in on the family's latest secret. The first half of dinner passed with forced small talk. My mother praised Rachel's new promotion. My father went on about the neighbor's renovations. And Rachel kept looking at me with that smug tilt of her chin, as if she was waiting for me to catch up on the joke. Finally, my father set down his fork and fixed his gaze on me. So, Daniel, the house. Big responsibility for someone like you. I kept my voice even. I've managed just fine. Have you? He pressed. Because a house isn't just walls and paint. It's taxes, upkeep, paperwork. Things you don't understand yet. Rachel leaned in, her smirk widening. Don't worry, Daniel. They'll take care of it. You've always been better at other things. I clenched my fists under the table. Funny, I said. I didn't realize ownership was something up for debate. My mother's smile turned brittle. We only want what's best for you. That house could become a burden. You don't want to lose it because of your inexperience. And what exactly do you plan to do about that? I asked. For the first time, my father didn't hide it. He leaned back, his eyes steady on mine. We've already taken steps to make sure the house doesn't slip through your fingers. It's safer in our hands. You'll thank us later. Rachel stifled a laugh, failing to hide it behind her wine glass. The heat rose in my chest. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled the bank statement from my pocket and laid it on the table. You mean like forging my authorization? The air went heavy. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's face drained of color. Rachel's smirk faltered. I tapped the paper. I didn't sign this. I didn't give you permission. Yet somehow, your names are on my property documents. My father's voice was cold. Watch what you're accusing us of. I'm not accusing, I said. I am stating facts. And facts are what will matter when this goes beyond this table. My mother tried to recover, her voice trembling but sweet. Daniel, we're your parents. We wouldn't do anything to hurt you. This is just a misunderstanding. No, I said firmly, my voice louder now. It's not a misunderstanding. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I wouldn't fight back. But you were wrong. The table was silent. Rachel shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting to our parents for reassurance. I stood, sliding the paper back into my pocket. This house isn't yours. It never was. And the next time you try to make a move on it, you'll find out just how wrong you are. I walked out without waiting for a response. Behind me, I heard the scrape of chairs, the hurried whispers, the brittle sound of my mother's voice breaking. Outside, the night air was cold, but I felt something else burning inside me. Clarity. They weren't going to stop. Not until they were forced to. And I was ready to force them. The morning after that dinner, I drove straight to the county clerk's office with the forged statement in hand. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't call Rachel. I wanted them to keep thinking I was naive, unprepared, easy to push around. That illusion was the only advantage I had left. The clerk was an older woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tone. When I explained the situation and slid the document across the counter, she studied it for a long moment before nodding. You did the right thing coming here. This isn't valid. It's sloppy, but it's also dangerous. She pulled up the records, showed me how requests had been filed under my property number. My parents had tried to gain access multiple times, submitting forms, calling, even showing up in person pretending to be authorized parties. I felt sick, but also strangely vindicated. They hadn't just been meddling. They had been plotting. The clerk helped me file a fraud alert and guided me through steps to lock everything down. I added layers of protection to the deed, updated security passwords, even opened a new account for property taxes so they couldn't intercept mail. And most importantly, I requested a notarized copy of my deed certified directly in my name, immune to tampering. By the time I left, I had everything I needed in a folder under my arm. The house wasn't just legally mine, it was ironclad beyond their reach. A week later, My parents called a family meeting. I knew what it would be before I arrived. Another performance, another attempt to assert control. But this time I came prepared. We sat around the dining room table again, the same oak table where they had confronted me before. My mother's hands fidgeted in her lap, my father's jaw was tight, and Rachel leaned back smugly, like she thought she was about to witness my defeat. My father began, his tone stern. "Daniel, we've decided the best course is for you to transfer the house into our names temporarily. It'll be safer. You'll avoid risks you don't understand." I let the silence stretch, then pulled the folder from my bag and laid it flat on the table. Slowly, I opened it, spreading the notarized deed across the polished wood. My name stared back at them, bold and official, stamped and sealed. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is the certified deed. My name, no one else's. The fraud alert is filed. The accounts are secured. And if you try again, I'll make sure everyone knows you forged documents to steal from your own son." My mother gasped softly, her hand flying in her mouth. Rachel's smirk vanished. My father's face hardened, but the flicker of panic in his eyes betrayed him. I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. "You wanted control. You wanted to erase me from something I built. But it's done. The house is mine. Forever. And the only thing you managed to prove is that Grandma was right to tell me, years ago, never let them take what you've earned." The room was silent except for the sound of my folder snapping shut. I stood, tucking it back under my arm. This conversation is over. I walked out without waiting for them to respond. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the sun sink low across my yard. For the first time, the house didn't feel heavy with secrets or battles. It felt safe. It felt steady. It felt mine. My parents had tried to twist ownership into control, to turn my independence into another string they could pull. But all they had managed was to expose themselves, to show me who they really were when the illusion of control slipped. They thought they could rewrite the story of my life. But I had closed the door on them, literally and legally, and I intended to keep it that way. If you've ever fought for something your own family tried to take from you, you know the satisfaction of standing on the porch of what's yours, knowing no one can touch it. Subscribe to this channel, hit like, and tell me in the comments, at what moment do you think my parents realized they had already lost the house for good?